analysis. I would like to formally welcome each one of you to the Union Budget Analysis by the founding directors of EGROW Foundation. We have made an attempt to look at the budget a little deeper and analytically before we get a chance to listen to the TV channels today evening or the newspapers tomorrow morning. Our analysis is going to be very simple. We will start with Dr. Ashok Vishandass because agriculture is all encompassing and there is a lot to be discussed in agriculture in today's budget. We will then move on to health and Dr. Rattan, who's an expert on health, he will be talking to us about the budget. And finally, we will move on to Colonel MP Singh, who will talk to us about the defense. I will wrap up the budget giving my overall analysis as well as looking at the monetary and fiscal issues that I see in the budget. With this, I'd like to invite Dr. Ashok Vishandas to share his thoughts with us for about 12 to 15 minutes.
Thank you, Professor Charan. Thank you, my friends, Dr. Rattan Chand, my colleague, and Colonel Mohinder Pal, and all other people who are on the air and listening this. And let me start with this. The budget offers for everyone something. So, in fact, Indian agriculture has nearly recouped what has been lost, renewed what has been paused, and re-energized what has slowed down during the pandemic. So this is the sum and substance, but let me focus because our other panelists will talk about other things. Let me focus on agriculture. Now, there are a lot of things on agriculture, but to summarize in short, because world recognize India as a bright star with growth of 7% during, and then the next year it will be about 6.8, but it can be in the bandwidth of 6 to 6.8. It may average around 6.5. Now, 11.5 crore farmers under the PM Kisan, they have been enabled for this PM growth, which will continue. Family for youth has been emphasized and impetus on growth and jobs. It's not a jobless growth. That means all small, medium, that will also be emphasized. And economic empowerment of women has been emphasized in this budget. Or basically, if I can use the word, वंचितों को वरीयता दी है. Those who have been deprived get priority. And that is the assumption. And that who have been deprived? They are the farmers and the downtrodden. They have been given. So, and in agriculture, digitization, the government has recognized a lot of importance on digitization of agriculture, the PAC, small cooperatives, because that cooperatives to सहकारी से समृद्धि, so that is very important. And for those small societies under agriculture, for creating the data, a lot of amount has been earmarked for this. And then from waste to wealth, Go Bardhan scheme has been emphasized, and government has also see about 44.5% of agriculture workers, they give rise to about 18% of the GDP. That means the remaining about 54% of workforce give rise to around 82%. So that means the labor productivity in agriculture is very low. Therefore, there had been a need to upskill the skills of unskilled worker. So government has recognized this issue. So and if farmers are given a training, a kind of skills, and then they can be withdrawn and then can be more gainfully employed in non-farm sector. And PM Matsya Yojana, that is the fishery, another 6,000 crore has been earmarked for this. This will again go a long way. So we don't have to emphasize only on the crop husbandry. They have diversified and gone beyond the crops on giving emphasis on animal husbandry and especially the fisheries. So about 6,000 crore has been given, and Another point, millet. See, the beauty of millet is not only medicinal value, but it is a water resilient crop, and this means under very difficult and water stress condition this can still grow, and there is a lot of demand for millets. And with the at the India's behest, the FAO of United Nations have declared International Millet Year 2023. So I am sure this will spur the demand for millet. And let us remember, India is the largest producer of millet and second largest exporter of millet. So this is a low cost commodity but has a high value and high demand now. And high that means the profitability is quite high because the cost of production is low, and it also entails a lower risk of damage due to crop adverse crop weather conditions. So it's a win-win situation, and this will also give a lot of impetus to the income of the farmer. Now 63,000 agriculture society, an amount of 2,516 crore has been earmarked for computerization of those data. On that shows also how much importance this budget has given to agriculture in particular, and data collection, data systematic thing, and therefore this will be very useful. And this budget is a digital driven economy, and lot of emphasis has been given on green energy, green farming to be focused, and India is going to be global hub of millet. And so, and then there are 500 new plants for waste to wealth. That means a lot of waste is ignored, but this will be used for creating wealth out of it. And 1 crore farmers to be facilitated for natural farming. Now, natural farming means it will reduce the expenditure on subsidy for fertilizer, and one crore more will be identified for natural farming. That means organic farming, free of fertilizer, free of pesticide, and that also has a lot of demand outside India. Not only in India, some of the states are taking a lot of lead in this, but more will be done. And and there is a emphasis to give boost to go burden. That means the field the natural manure for creating and augmenting the productivity. So this will be, and then there will be 30 Skill India International Center to be set up, which will also go a long way in making the farmers skilled. And one more thing, there is a emphasis on agriculture commodity export. For this, one district, one product will be propagated. It has been done previously, but on a low scale. Now, this budget will give boost to this thing on identifying each district with the product on which it has a comparative advantage. For instance, in Varanasi, our area like are in near Pune, in Maharashtra, there is a grape net. So this will also boost the agriculture, and for and there will be some tax holiday for startup in agriculture, and that will be extended for 10 years. So these are the broad contours of the agriculture. With these initiative and the proposal of the finance minister, I think agriculture in particular will be taken to a higher trajectory of growth, and this offers a lot of promise for farmers, lot of promise for our agriculture. And when I say agriculture, it includes animal husbandry and fishery also. So it is very comprehensive, and it will go a long way in taking the growth to a higher level. So with these things, Charan, I will stop, and in case anybody has any question, I will take. Otherwise, because I have to leave, I will take your permission to leave early. because I have to rush to some other commitment. Thank you, Charan Singh, and thank you all the listeners.
I would thank you, Professor Ashok Vishandass, because I know you have to be on Sunset TV immediately. So I think we thank you for introducing us to the agriculture sector with so many people sitting in agriculture and getting their livelihood from agriculture. This is such an important thing. And the points that you have raised about the millets and the agriculture center which they are talking of, I think the government is in the right direction. I totally agree with you. I would now like to move on and invite Dr. Rattan Chand to tell us about the budget and the health. Dr. Rattan Chand, please.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Charan, and good afternoon to all.
Dr.
In
Chand, would you like to switch on your video?
is not switched on.
No.
Okay.
Now it's on.
Okay. So when we talk of health, it will be, I think, in the budget, it will be around 2.1% of the GDP, this budget outlay for health. So if we consider the uh, revised estimate of 2022 23, then the increase in the budget is 32%. But only because last year this RE was 92% of the BE. So that means 8% of the budget could not be spent. So uh, this means that the states and the central government need to increase the efficiency of spending the budget. Uh, Now, in the health budget, only few schemes or few lines were there mentioned in the speech of the finance minister. But this doesn't mean that the existing schemes of health will not function. They will continue to function like National Health Mission, then Ayushman Bharat Jan Arogya Yojana, under which around 50 crore people are covered uh, under the Ayushman Bharat, giving benefit of 5 lakhs to each family. So, and new All India Institute of Medical Sciences, new medical colleges in each district hospitals. So this type of schemes will continue. So we should also consider that the related schemes of nutrition, like National Nutrition Mission, Har Ghar Se, Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, that means drinking water, piped drinking water supply, and construction of toilets, etc. All these are related to the health sector. So all these schemes are also contributing indirectly to the health sector, because if you get clean water supply, then you will have lesser diseases. So all these things are also contributing to the health sector. So far as this budget is concerned, four or five things were said. These include that since 2014, around 157 colleges, medical colleges were established. In all these medical colleges, that 157 nursing schools will also be established. So this is the one announcement. At present, we have shortage of nurses, especially at the peripheral level in the primary health centers or the community health center. So maybe I think uh, this will help to produce more nurses, which can be deployed at the peripheral level. Then another scheme that is announced is the sickle cell anemia elimination mission. So sickle cell, I may tell this is a disease. Mean in this disease, red blood cells in the blood, or they are destroyed automatically. Mean this increases immunity of so this is a major disease in the tribal areas. So 7 crore people will be screened in the age group of 0 to 40 years for tackling this in the tribal areas. And this will be collaborative effort of the central and state governments. Then another scheme is announced regarding the Indian Council of Medical Research Laboratories. They will be available for the research and development. So to promote this, these will be made available to the public and private and medical colleges faculty, and also private sector R&D teams. So this is another scheme. Next is the research and innovation in the pharma sector. So a new program to promote research and innovation in pharmaceuticals will be taken up through centers of excellence, where uh, we will be encouraging that the government will be encouraging industry to invest in research and development in specific priority areas. And next scheme that is announced, it is dedicated multidisciplinary courses for medical devices. So in order to manufacture more and more devices, technical devices, so this course will be launched. So these were the schemes which have been announced uh, in this budget. And in addition to this, the earlier Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission, which will provide unique identity, unique health identity to every person, that is also functioning, and its more ecosystem will also be developed. So this is all I have to say in the health sector. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rattan. Now let's move on to Dr. Colonel MP Singh to tell us something about the defense.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Jai Hind to everyone. And today we had a very good defense budget outlay. And why I say very good is that it is a step towards a self-reliant defense sector, as was envisaged, and the practice started about 2 years back to move into a mode where we are self-reliant as far as the defense sector is concerned, more so in terms of manufacturing. As in 2021, it was started that we should have about 58% of the capital procurement through own industry, and it was increased to about 68%. And in this budget, we are maintaining that same tempo. And otherwise, the capital total budget has gone up by about 13% from the last year's budget, if we see, where it was about 5,25,000 crores to now at 5,93,537 crores. So about 13% increase in the overall allocation of the defense budget. And for the capital, about 12.5% increase in the capital expenditure. And revenue expenditure, though not much increase, it has gone up to 2.7 lakh crores, up from 2.39 lakh crores last year. What if we compare it with about 9 to 10 years back? I just have a period of 2000. Let's say if we compare it with 14-15, was about 10 years back, it was 2,24,000 crores defense allocations. So if you see from that angle, we have almost gone more than double. So it's a good move toward that. We are the third largest armed forces, and our defense budget is also in sync with that. Of course, if you see overall defense expenditures, then the US is somewhere around $800 billion, followed by China around $220 billion, and India at around $80 billion. So, though when we see from that angle, yeah, our defense spending is not that, but then defense spending depends a lot on the overall geostrategic situation where you are. So we have, though there are some, we have some turbulence on the borders, but otherwise quite stabilized. If you see from the last 1 year, quite stabilized on as far the borders are concerned, and we are now in a big way towards the weapon procurement and upgradation of our systems. So towards that, I think it's a overall a positive budget with the lot of increase in R&D. Few things which when I was going through the details of the defense spendings, so which is actually catching the eye is in the field of R&D. So in R&D, a lot of money has been allocated in terms of around 1,231 1,231 crores for development of prototypes, and research and development is getting about 12,000 crores R&D, that is with the DRDO. So that's a quite a positive development that a lot of allocations are going on. And the more R&D comes up, because I remember about 2 years back when I was giving this recommendation to the government that we have to invest in R&D. Otherwise, we cannot become Atmanirbhar in defense. And that's what has started off a very positive sign by the government. Of course, R&D is a slow and steady work. R&Ds will show results after 5 years, 10 years. They can't show instant results. So that has started in a big way, and that's a positive sign. And this every budget, the allocations of R&D are increasing. And also, the second part is a lot of money is being earmarked for the public sector enterprises in the prototype development and all. So that will give a good impetus to own defense manufacturing and various sectors like Armored Vehicle Nigam Limited is being there, Advanced Weapon Equipment Limited, Gliders India Limited, India Optel, Munitions India. So all these public sector and private sector companies are getting incorporated in overall defense research. So that is what evolved a developed country always has. So we, at time, we were one of the largest importers of weapon systems. So from there, if you see from about 3 years back, when we were the largest, one of the largest importers of weapon system, now we are getting on the Atmanirbhar as far as defense manufacturing is concerned. So overall, I would say it was a good defense budget as far as defense allocations are concerned. And overall spending, if we see, it's about 8% of the total government spendings, which is in sync with the policy, I think, which is in vogue. But expenditure does take place on the defense. So that's about it as far the defense is concerned. So these are the highlights of the present allocations as of now.
Thank you, Dr. Colonel MP Singh. Now let me give you my views on this budget. My overall view about the budget is that it is a futuristic budget. It is growth-oriented budget. It lays the foundation for the next 25 years because the Prime Minister has been talking about Amrit Kal, and the Finance Minister in her opening statement said this is the first budget in the Amrit Kal. So, in the right spirit, when we have assumed the presidency of G20, it is important that we are able to tell the world what we have done in the past 4 or 5 years, which has held us in such good growth that we are, despite the pandemic, we are the fastest growing country in the world. Despite many setbacks, our inflation is not as high as that is there in the Western world, where the 30-year average is 2% and they are clocking 10%. Our 30-year average is around 6%. Our inflation has been in the range of 7 to 8%. Now, this is the right time to tell to the world how we have handled our fiscal policy so efficiently and in such a laser beam manner that we have not allowed people to sink under the poverty line, as well as we have been able to maintain growth momentum very healthy. now that we are an engine for rest of the world. So let me present to you my analysis about this budget. Let me start with the fiscal figures. If you look at the gross fiscal deficit, it has gone down from 6.4% to 5.9%. And the finance minister very clearly said she is holding on to the glide path which she had announced 2 years back, and then by 25-26 they would be bringing it down to about 4%. That means, pandemic or no pandemic, India's growth path, India's fiscal consolidation is on a very steady path. That also implies that the fiscal policy in the country is very responsible, is accountable, and is made with lots of deep thought. The beauty of this adjustment on the gross fiscal deficit is the quality of the adjustment. The quality of the adjustment comes from the revenue deficit. If you look at the revenue deficit, under the revised estimates, it is 4.1%, and the budget estimates last year were 3.8%. The budget estimate for the next year is 2.9%. So if you compare it with the revised estimates from 4.1 to 2.9, as you can clearly see, the adjustment is far more substantial than the adjustment from 6.4 to 5.9. That is why I say the quality of adjustment is very high. It would be pertinent to mention here that the budget has been made on a certain assumption, which I think is a very conservative assumption. They have made it on the assumption of 10.5%. If I assume an inflation of around 5% or even 4%, and I assume a growth rate of about 7%, then 10.5 is a rather conservative estimate. So that means if I'm able to grow between 11 and 12%, my GDP will grow at that rate. All these deficit figures will further take a plunge. That's why I say this budget has been made on a conservative note. Similarly, if we are growing around 11 to 12%, the tax collection, both direct and indirect taxes, would be higher than what they have estimated. And again, the country would be in a very good fiscal space. As far as the deficit is concerned, as I've already mentioned, we are in a good place. The debt to GDP ratios are also in a comfortable zone, much better than the advanced countries and other emerging countries. Other emerging countries we need to compare with not the oil producing countries, but countries which are like us. Most of the advanced countries have exceeded 100% of debt to GDP ratio. In India, we are still maintaining around 80 to 85% debt to GDP ratio. Therefore, I say it is a great fiscal exercise that has been done. Now the issue is, where is the money coming from? It's coming from income tax about 15 paisa to 100, and customs about 4 paisa, union excise duty is about 7%, goods and services tax is about 17%. And that is how it should be, because the GST has subsumed many other taxes. Now the key thing is, borrowings are going to be large. They're about 34%. Now, obviously, if tax to GDP ratio hovers around 17% and doesn't rise very high, there are projects, development projects in an emerging country, the expenditure has to be incurred, that has to be then filled in by borrowings. Please remember, additional borrowings imply higher interest. So where is the money going? Here we are. The interest payments account for 20 paisa to 100. That means of our total expenditure, 20 paisa is going into interest payments. Defense is getting 8, we have just heard about it. Subsidies about 7. Finance Commission does transfers interstate, that's about 9 paisa. State share of taxes and duties about 18. Pensions is 4%, 8% is other expenditure. Now, that means longevity of life is taking place in our country. People are retiring and living longer, and pensions burden, if you may call so, is also going to be increasing. I mention this because I'm little worried from the new pension scheme, which is a generally good scheme. Many states have opted back for the old pension scheme, which is a direct burden on the fiscal authority, state or center. Then the issue is, where is the major expenditure going? And I want to share this with you because I think it is important. If you look at the tax collections, the tax collection on income is going to increase to about 9 lakh crore from 8.15 lakh crore under revised estimates. And if you look at the corporation tax, it's going to increase to 9.22 lakh crore from 8.3 lakh crore. The point again I'm making that I'm expecting a higher tax collection because buoyancy in taxes will be much higher. GST, of course, for the center has been assumed at 8.54 lakh crore in the previous revised estimates to 9.6 lakh crore. Now, I must mention here that this also looks to me to be an underestimate and conservative. Going by the data which has just been released in January, GST collection has been 1.5 lakh crore. So if going further, the economy is going at a higher rate, I would assume a much higher GST collection and it gets divided between center and state. I understand that. I still feel that the amount of GST will be much higher here. I also want to take you to the schemes that have been announced by the government. And I think these are very important schemes. And why I want to share some figures with you, because I'm going to come back and share some thoughts with you. If I look at, and we have been talking at EGROW Foundation about developing the Northeast, and I see a beautiful trend here in Northeast. The expenditure, which was around 2,755 crore, has been escalated to 5,892 crore under the budget estimates. I think the thrust is in the right place. Health, Dr. Rattan has already mentioned, so I'm not going to repeat it. IT and telecom, the expenditure is expected to increase from 74,000 crore to 93,000 crore. On social welfare, and I think this is important, the expenditure is budgeted to increase from 46,000 crore to 55,000 crore. Transport is a big thing, and I'm going to come to it in the later part of my thoughts, where the expenditure has increased from 3,90,000 to 5,15,000 crore. Substantial jump. Please remember, transport is part of capital expenditure, and that has lots of multiplier effect. And that I think is really important. Something that I want to share at this point is that in this budget, the share of capital expenditure has increased tremendously. It has increased from 10.53 lakh crore to 13.71 lakh crore. So you can imagine there's a substantial jump in capital expenditure. And when there's a substantial jump in capital expenditure, as you know, it has lots of multiplier effect. It is employment generating and it is also creating growth. So that I think is something which needs to be appreciated. I'm going to bore you for next 1 minute with some statistics, but I think it's important statistics. Here is Ayushman Bharat expenditure, which is going to increase from 6,000 crore, 6,400 crore to 7,200. On Blue Revolution, from 1,400 to 2,025. On Swachh Bharat Mission, substantial jump from 2,000 crore to 5,000 crore. On Swachh Bharat Mission Grameen, from 5,000 to 7,000 crore. I think that's a substantial. On the primary agriculture credit societies, there's a substantial jump in computerization from 350 crore to 960 crore. That means that once computerization gets into the rural areas in the primary agriculture societies, it's going to change the costing there and also going to advance the literacy of financial literacy in that region. The Mission Shakti, Mission for Protection and Empowerment of Women, the budget allocation has increased from 2,200 crore to 3,100 crore. And for Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, from 1,800 crore to 4,200 crore. Look at the dimensions in which the change is taking place. And I'm only sharing with you the ones which have some infrastructure or development orientation. Here is some figure I want to again bring it to your notice. schemes for Northeast Council and Northeast Special Infrastructure Development Scheme and Prime Minister's Development Initiative for Northeast region. This expenditure is increasing substantially from 2,400 crore to 5,500 crore. So in that way, the government is trying to bring in Northeast in a big way into the mainstream and grow it up there. The modified program for development of semiconductors and display manufacturing ecosystems in India, the government's outlay is going to increase from 200 crore to 3,000 crore, which is, I think, a substantial jump. On PLI scheme, the expenditure is again around 5,000 crore in the budget. Then, if we look at the the scheme for faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles in India, which is, as far as climate is concerned, very good. And you have heard the finance minister say they want to phase out old vehicles, both at the center and the state. And the center is taking the initiative to help the states phase it out, which I think means a cleaner India, a better India. So scheme for faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, the budget outlay is increasing from 2,900 crore to 5,200 crore. Now, the last two things that I want to bring to your notice that the infrastructure, the capital expenditure has been large, and the large capital expenditure is going to be incurred on various things. Railways is one of it. 2.4 lakh crore is going to be spent on railways. Now, where is it going to be spent on railways? There's a substantial jump, many things. They're going to modernize the railways, but the key thing that I thought I'll bring to your notice is rolling stock. The rolling stock is going to increase from 15,000 to 37,000 crore. Please remember, Vande Bharat expresses, the fast trains which have been introduced by the government, running at a speed of about 130 kilometers an hour, really fast, faster than the Shatabdis and the Rajdhanis. The Vande Mataram is totally manufactured in India, the rolling stock. So to that extent, Make in India emphasis has started showing results, and I wanted to bring this to your notice. The government is also thinking in terms of renewable sources of energy, not just thinking, it is showing results. The capital outlay on solar is increased from 3,400 crore to 4,970 crore. On the infrastructure, when the capital expenditure is increasing, other than the railways, the government is also thinking of 50 additional airports, heliports, water aerodromes, advanced landing zones to be revitalized. So if we look at and then they want to develop tourist spots, and they also want to do critical transport projects at 100 different places for the last connectivity. So if we look at the expenditure outlay, integrated development of tourist circuits, the expenditure is going to more than double from 600 crore to 1400 crore. Given the statistics, now let's look at the broad picture that the budget is all about. Budget is just not an accounting exercise. It lays out the thought and the scheme of things that the government has in mind. To my mind, this budget is not only meant for the current year, it is front loaded for other years. This thought comes from the economic survey which was released yesterday. In the economic survey, it clearly said we are in a position to attain 8% growth if we are able to do incremental tinkering and reforms in various areas. So what does this budget do? This budget helps put lot of money into infrastructure. Infrastructure has a different multiplier, about 4 times more than the revenue expenditure. So with the large outlay on infrastructure, it is obvious that we are going to get a long-term multiplier effect on growth. As far as education is concerned, you are aware the finance minister has announced about various skilling centers and educational schemes across the country. As far as computerization is concerned, again, the emphasis has been on digital in a big way. When it comes to financial services, inclusivity is the mantra. In this inclusivity, one thing is apparent. The youth have been taken into account and schemes announced to engage them, and women empowerment has also been emphasized. The self-help groups are going to play a crucial role in empowering our women. Now, self-help groups create employment, create also production. So if self-help groups are going to be utilized to bring the women into workforce, and labor force participation of females in our country is the lowest amongst the world, if we are going to give it a growth and a push and impetus and nudge, whatever you want to call it, in whatever way it happens in the next few years, it is certainly going to add to our growth story. I think that is something very, very important. The green emphasis on the green growth, I think, is also very important. And I'm going to share some thoughts with you on the green growth. On banking and finance, I was very impressed when the madam announced that they are going to revisit some of the schemes as far as his investor protection is concerned. They're going to look at the Banking Act and the RBI Act and see what best can be done. The green credit is going to become a buzzword. A notification would come and encouraging entrepreneurs and scheme of things industry which encourages green financing. The National Information Registry, Financial Information Registry, I think is another initiative which will go a long way in banking. Agriculture has been covered by Dr. Vishandass. When it comes to industry, there is again lots of schemes basically for MSMEs, especially the credit guarantee, where about 9,000 crore has been allocated here. The pharma industry again is being given a nudge. There's a central data processing center being set up so that data can be collected and then remedial measures announced. And then private investment in infrastructure, partly I've discussed with you, and coastal shipping is going to be encouraged. I've discussed railways with you. The road transport and the road infrastructure is heavily being laid down in the country. Illustratively, you know about the Delhi Bombay route, the one of the most modern routes, the bullet trains coming in. I've just mentioned about the Vande Bharat. In addition to it, to save cost, increase efficiency, the coast, along with the coast, waterways are going to be used. So on one hand, we are going to have 50 airports, we are modernizing Indian railways, we are modernizing Indian road network, we are also introducing the coastal waterways so that movement of goods, traffic, humans, persons is seamless and is cost effective. The demographic part has not been lost. There's been a thought on the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0. There is National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme and Skill India digital platform. I also like the announcement that they are going to be helping the bureaucrats and people in the workspace to upskill and update their skills. That means they will be modernized workforce in our country. The senior citizens, as I just mentioned, that the pension bill is rising 4% of 100, 4% of the total, it's increasing, and longevity is increasing. People are living longer. And I have always said when you fund a senior citizen, it is the safest one. It doesn't get into drugs, it doesn't get into alcohol, it gets into the family, it is, call it, has a good multiplier effect. For senior citizens, they have enhanced the maximum deposit limit from 15 lakh to 30 lakh. I think that's a very good thing. Now, when it comes to women, I also want to mention about the Mahila Saman Savings Certificate. They have also tried to bring in the tribals. The Eklavya model residential schools are going to play an important role. And they're also thinking of, and this I think is very good, the scheme for the artisans. That I thought is an excellent scheme which has been announced by the government. In addition to all this, there is the National Digital Library for Children and Adolescents. I was very impressed. If we want to improve literacy and learning in the country, the government is thinking in terms of physical library for our children. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are the latest buzzwords as far as technology is concerned. Three centers of excellence for artificial intelligence, and to engage it, how to improve India and India's growth pattern, I thought is also very encouraging. Now, let me conclude by summing up before opening up for the question answer session. I believe the budget is growth oriented because it has emphasized on demographics, on female labor force participation. It has emphasized on the real sector, on agriculture in a big way, and industry, especially MSMEs. It has also taken care of health and education and skilling. It also takes care of the finances because it's discussing about how to improve the banking experience. I must mention here, India stands out as a country with terrific financial stability. The non-performing assets of the country, despite the pandemic, are southward looking, which is encouraging. Credit to MSME sector is northward rising, which is also very encouraging. So the capital is being taken care, the labor is being taken care, and their health and their skill levels are being taken care. And then technology is being used, deployed. Artificial intelligence is being brought into the system so that we are able to increase and grow with a multiplier effect. The emphasis of the government is in the right direction. The money, it's the election year budget, call it that way. It's the last budget full year before the election, call it the election year budget, but it does not smell of freebies, not at all. One can argue, and this I must mention, that the slabs that have been changed have been long overdue. They have been simplified. The tax rates have been made simpler in multiples of 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. The highest surcharge has been reduced from 37 to 25%. I'm sure the Laffer curve is going to operate here. The presumptive tax that has been introduced for MSMEs is also very encouraging up to a certain point. You can just tap the presumptive tax and need not take the trouble of filling the forms and doing the accounting. Given these different things that have been introduced on the direct taxes and in the indirect taxes, the change in the customs duty, encouraging electronics within the country, my conclusion is that this budget will spur employment, will not increase, but certainly reduce if the supply side issues don't block it in a big way. There's a year of the war, a year recovery from the pandemic, inflation will be under control. Fiscal space, I've already mentioned, is within control. So this budget will spur growth, spur employment, and it will make India's growth story more steadfast than what it was in the past. So I conclude here, and we have still about 11 minutes. We welcome questions or observations if anyone has. Please raise your hand so that in a systematic way, all of us can get a chance and we can all talk and make our observations and share our thoughts. So I welcome if anyone else wants to pitch in or share a thought.
Hello, Professor. Can I ask a question? I am Dr. Swapnil speaking.
Please, Doctor.
Yeah, thanks a lot for everyone for the wonderful insight on the budget. It has been very much helpful. So I have very precise question. I definitely understand that there has been a lot of push and stimulus in terms of the defense, in terms of the welfare schemes, and also the and the other welcoming schemes. So when the budget allocation has expanded everywhere, including even medical, defense, infrastructure, logistic, everywhere, where the compromise has been done, first thing, because in a nutshell, when I'm inflating something, so there has to be somewhere deflation. That's first question. Second question, if at all I mean everything is good, so given the macroeconomic outlook, which is kind of looking like at the world economic level, there are a lot of supply constraint, Ukraine war is also ongoing, will this budget be able to address the challenges which would be upcoming in future? at an international level. Thank you.
Professor Soni, you are a professor like any one of us. I'm not going to go in details because you and me are both in the academic world, but I will just share one thought with you.
Thank you.
The cake is expanding. And the cake is expanding from a simple calculation that I'll share with you. Firstly, they have computed that the cake will expand at 10.5%, which I'm arguing is conservative. But if I look at the total receipts of the budget, then they are expanding from the revised estimates of 4,18,000, 41 lakhs 87,000 to 45 lakhs and 4,000. So that is the total receipts. If I look at the tax revenue net of the center, that is increasing from 20 lakhs 86,000 to 30,000. And if we look at the capital receipts, basically borrowings have increased from 17 lakh 55,000 to 17 lakh 86,000, and recovery of loans has not increased much, and other receipts have not increased much. So I would say capital receipts are increasing from 18 lakh 38,000 to 18 lakh 70,000, but revenue receipts are increasing from 23 lakh 48,000 to 26 lakh 32,000. So the cake is expanding. That is where I would put it. And I would also say the priorities have certainly been rejuggled. And if we are going to grow and enter the next century, and we want to call this the century of India, then we obviously have to prioritize and put it on high priority areas like digital, like tourism, like infrastructure, in railways, in those 50 heliports that they're thinking, or 100 transport centers and hubs that they're thinking. In the IT world, I think that priority is changing. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Perfectly explained.
Professor Vijay Kumar.
Hi, Professor.
Vijay Kumar.
Yeah, Professor, welcome.
I have two questions. When compared to last year budget, in this health and education seems to be neglected. And another thing, there are no changes, it seems, in old tax system. Please concentrate on this.
Yeah,
Please
Professor,
focus.
I totally agree with you. On health, I think there has been some expansion. On education and social sector, which I think they've played a emphatic role, I would invite your attention to the economic surveys new chapter that they've introduced in the economic survey of social sector. Not that I'm super excited on reading that chapter, it's very data intensive, but then I like the emphasis is on social sector. Even in today's budget speech, the emphasis on female labor force participation, I thought was in the very right direction. So maybe on figure, under education, center and state, I do not have the state data. Under health, center and state, I don't have the state data. But I think in a way, the center is making a nudge and saying, okay, the way it is making in terms of retiring 15-year-old vehicles, which can be more polluting. As far as your second component of the question is concerned, and that relates to, will the country be able to handle the challenges on the way? My own analysis is, which I can share with you, that the fiscal space that we have in our country, given in terms of the gross fiscal deficit, the debt GDP ratios, the fiscal space that we have in our country, given that our inflationary pressures are not as high as in the rest of the world, given that our financial sector is still robust and healthy and credit can flow to the productive sectors seamlessly, it has already increased, it is increasing seamlessly. Given that we have not been aggressive in raising the interest rates, the government vis-a-vis the rest of the world, we are in a better position, there's no doubt about it. The Prime Minister's Awas Yojana is obviously going to be having a multiplier effect. You know, all housings, they impact about 275 industries other than the housing itself. So therefore, once we are emphasizing on the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, and we are emphasizing on the roads, on new railway tracks, on modernizing the rolling stock, it's going to be employment generating. Now, this links up with yesterday's economic survey, which found out that the private consumption expenditure is the highest, around 58% now, amongst the last many years. If we are able to create this employment, we are able to generate demand, we will create enough private consumption expenditure within the country. And if there's a slowdown because of the self-invited sacrifice ratios by these advanced countries in raising their interest rates, there's enough demand within the country to absorb that production. However, I did share with you the data on PLI. On PLI, the allocations are larger than previous year. PLI is one such segment which helped us in attaining the highest export growth in the last financial year. But my argument is, if there's a slowdown in the world as it is anticipated, within the country, given the growth impetus, given the capital expenditure high, given the infrastructure thrust, we will be able to support domestic growth within our own country, domestic industrial output within our own country. God forbid we cannot export. So that's the point I'm making, and that's why I'm confident that within the country we have the wherewithal to ride through this wave.
Yes, I'm Matthew Gurin from Kerala.
Yeah.
I have two queries. One is, as students of economics, we know the growth drivers C plus I plus V plus F. That sector is not sufficiently mentioned in our discussion. I think that is also one of the lacunae of the budget. So, if that is very uncertain, and if it proves otherwise, then all the claims which we are raising, how they are going to be sustainable. This is one of my questions. The second question about the rural inclusive growth and development. So far, we have been speaking much about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. And there is where I could not find any mention of this very important scheme. So these are my two queries. Thank you very much for this.
Professor, as far as Manrega is concerned, it is there, and I did not read the data because it's downward sloping. And the reason for it downward sloping is that the migrant labor which had gone back to the villages has returned back to the cities. So therefore, the need to tap Manrega is not there as much as it was during the pandemic years. The second point that you made about the exports, that's exactly the argument that I'm making, that the current account deficit is, on the higher side, but you also know that while trade of goods is getting impacted by the slowdown in the rest of the world, our services and IT exports are in a way compensating. So we are not in doldrums. We won't be in a situation of 1991 where we'll run out of foreign exchange reserves. In any case, our foreign exchange reserves today are around 563 billion, which is a good number, which is reasonable. But that time it was a different story. But the drying up of the Western world's export opportunities do not scare us at this point. And one of the reasons why it doesn't scare us, because as I argued, there's enough demand and enough potential for demand within the country. As far as exports are concerned, the PLI scheme was the most potent scheme which pushed the exports to the maximum in the last financial year. The expenditure under PLI scheme, I did mention to you that they have expanded it. So to that extent, it's not that they have just left exports high and dry. To my mind, they are continuing to support it, but then that gravity or that fear is not there that would have been there in anyone's mind if it was 1991. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's 6 p.m. I know today's a budget day. Each one of us are going to be on different channels. So I seek your forgiveness. I want to thank each one of you for encouraging EGROW, sharing their thoughts with all of you, and making this session a very interesting and a participative session. Before I close, I would just like to check with my two colleagues if they have any last word to say. Dr. Rattan Chand, would you like to add something, or make a last observation? And Colonel Dr. MP Singh, would you like to make some last observation or comment?
Yeah, I would like to make some two comments. Though the budget, the defense part is quite welcome, but generally, all these time during the budget speech, the defense minister does announce certain schemes for the ex-servicemen, the welfare. So this one observation was this time that part was lacking in the defense speech, in the budget speech. So probably that could have been incorporated, and neither do we see. This is an occasion and a platform that some new things are introduced. So that's my only observation, that this was not there in the budget speech this time.
Yeah, you could be right, but the government probably could be thinking that in case they do it, they'll be dubbed as a populist budget, and they wanted to avoid that criticism. Maybe that's the reason, but I do not know what they have in mind. I'm sure throughout the evening, the finance secretary and others are going to be on different channels. They'll probably clarify, but that could be my observation to what you are saying. Thank you for very much for being with us today. And Dr. Rattan Chand, would you have any last minute observation to make?
Oh, thanks. It's okay.
Thanks. Okay, then let me conclude. This is from the EGROW Foundation. Just 2 days away, on Friday, we are going to have a panel of experts chaired by Dr. Professor Ravindra Dholakia, talking to us about their analysis of the budget. And in his analysis, there'll be different experts joining us. There's going to be Dr. Pinaki, who was earlier the director of National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, Professor Upendra and Professor Gayatri, both of them fiscal experts, Mr. Ajit from Ernest Young, he's going to be here with us, and we're going to have a market person, Dharmakirti Joshi from CRISIL, who will be speaking to us. We all know about Dr. Surjit Bhalla. He's the former ED at IMF and earlier member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He'll also be there with us. So I would invite all of you to be with us on Friday from 4:30 to 5:30 and 4:30 to 6 p.m. and we'll have further analysis of the union budget with much more depth. Thank you so much.